Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Telekin Gibbons webinar entitled COVID-19 Corporate Visa Tax Relief Measure for Thai Companies. My name is Supasit Saipan, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. Before we begin, a little housekeeping for this webinar. Firstly, we are gladly welcome your question, and you can feel free to write them at any time in the comment box on the right side of your screen during the session. As we have a large number of attendees today, all of you have been placed on mute, and we will be only accepting written questions through the Q&A box. Our speaker will address those questions during the Q&A session at the end of your presentation, or at the end of the presentation. Should you have any issues with the software, you can also type them here, and our IT team will be on hand to assist you. Secondly, our marketing team will make the PowerPoint available to you after the session via email. You are also welcome to contact them with any further queries that you may have when the session has ended. With that out of the way, it is now my privilege to introduce our distinguished speakers today, who will be discussing several temporary relief measures that the Thai government has introduced and implemented in an attempt to help business and economic disruption caused by the outbreak of COVID-19. To date, these measures cover a high variety of high-impact areas, including corporate requirements, visa and immigration application, tax filing, and other allowance schemes, with additional relaxation expected on the horizon. To start the session, Khun Korpkit Tianpricha, Partner and Director of Telekin Gibbons Corporate and Commercial Group, will discuss relief measures on corporate requirements as well as visa and immigration obligations. Following that, Khun Warapa Orat, our Senior Associate and Head of our firm Tax Practice, will dive into tax-related relief measures. At the end of the session, both of our presenters will respond to your questions together during a Q&A session of 10 to 15 minutes. Shortly after the completion of this webinar, our firm accounting team will circulate a feedback form, today's presentation slide, and several relevant articles to all webinars attendees. And with that out of the way, I now turn it over to Khun Korpkit.
สวัสดีครับ Hello everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today. Quite exciting. We've been working from home for almost 4 weeks. First time in many weeks that I get to wear the suit. I see on the list of registered attendees many familiar names. Many of them are our existing clients. I have to apologize for those who met me before. I know my hair is a little bit long. I will get my hair cut as soon as the barber reopened. My wife offered to give me a haircut last night. I said no, because I want you to focus on my presentation, not laughing at my haircut. You should see our moderator, Supasit, good-looking guy, but with his hair is more like a hippie. That's why we don't want you to see him. Okay, today you're going to learn a bit about the corporate compliance, visa compliance duties, and what kind of relief measures that the government of Thailand has launched in the past few weeks, including tax for my colleagues to be covered. Let's get started. The AGM is upcoming for many companies. Every company is in Thailand, as you can see on this slide. I divide into private companies and public companies. Every company has a whole AGM annual general meeting of the shareholders within 4 months from the ending of the fiscal period. As you can see, for a private company, there's quite a relevant section for you to see, and for public companies, also the same, 4 months, counting from the end of fiscal period, whatever it is. Most companies choose the fiscal period as January 1st to December 31st. So the 4-month period will end in April. The procedures to hold the AGM annual general meeting of the shareholders. First, you need to hold the board meetings to make a resolution to call for the AGM. The board meeting is important. It is compulsory by law. Of course, for public companies, you have to do it live. You have to make it real. But for private company, yes, is legally required. It's been determined by Supreme Court that the board must be held first before you call for an AGM. Otherwise, the AGM would be voidable, not void, which means if you fail to hold board meetings and you proceed directly to the AGM and the AGM, whatever resolution you adopted, will not be automatically voided, which means any shareholders who want to object can object it, but they have only 1 month to object it. So if there's no objection within 1 month, the AGM would seem to be valid and cannot be dissolved, even though there was no board meetings. So there's a procedure required by law for both private companies and public company that the notice calling from the AGM has to be mailed to every shareholders to the registered address that known to the company, and also published in a local newspaper. If you practice the compliance for the company, you know what to do. At the moment, Thai Post is closed. They don't mail any documents out of Thailand to any country. As far as I know, they only mail to China. So you have to, as a corporate law firm, we have to do it over a professional courier, DHL, FedEx. Now, then there have to be 7 days waiting period, which means the mailing of notice, the publication of AGM notice in the newspaper have to happen 7 days before the AGM, unless the article of association requires longer time. That's the procedures as you can see on this slide. Now, the common agenda for the AGM are quite similar for both private companies and public companies. First of all, the directors have to present report. For public company, it have to be in writing of annual report. But for private companies, you can just ask the directors to present to the AGM verbally, telling the financial performance of the past year, business operation report, things like that. Then one of the most important agenda is to approve the audited financial statement of the previous fiscal period. Of course, the audited financial statement has to be finished and complete and signed by the auditor, dated by the auditor before you bring it to the AGM. Actually, it's required by law that you have to enclose a copy of the audited financial statement in the AGM notice when you mail it to the shareholders. There will be agendas for declaration of dividends. You can choose to declare, not to declare. There will be agenda for election of directors whose term is retired, and also to appoint director for the next fiscal period. That's the common agendas. We start to receive some inquiries on the agenda of the 2020 AGM. Many companies start to suffer from financial difficulties. Some have asking Kun Kapkit what to do. We already declare interim dividend by the board. At that time, we thought the whole year will be profitable. But now the audit financial statement came out, there's no profit, it's at loss. Would there be any responsibility or liability on the directors? That's something to think about. Of course, we can advise specific issues like that. Physical attendance requirement, I break down to the board meetings and AGM meeting for you to see. Is similar for private and public companies that board member, meaning every director has to attend the board meeting by himself or but not by proxy. It has been determined by the Thai authority regulating the laws, saying that director was chosen by the shareholders because of his characters, because of his skills, because of his profile. So director had to perform the work, meaning had to attend, speak, discuss at the board meeting by himself. Meaning Thai law does not allow proxy at board meeting level. Director had to attend by himself. So you have to look at the quorum required by under your article of association, how many board members you need to attend the board meetings, and it has to be attended by that person. Basically, it has to be a physical meeting, so it has to be a place, date, and time that board members have to meet. And also, it could be e-meeting, which I will discuss later. But also at the AGM level, at the shareholders meeting level, shareholders have the right to appoint proxy, unlike the board meetings. So at AGM, you can choose to appoint any proxy. And we get questioned a lot at, does it have to be company director? Does it have to be employees? Can it be an officer? Can be an attorney? It can be anyone. It can be anyone. And in case of foreign corporation, you can appoint anyone from anywhere. It can be Thai, it can be foreigners. Similar to board meeting, at the AGM have to be at a specific venue, physical place, and also it can be at e-meeting. The difference between private company and public company, as you can see, is limitation on the place that you can hold for board meeting and AGM meeting. For public companies, it has to be in that province where the company's office is located. Usually, the typical choice would be at the company's office. But for private companies, you have more flexibility. You can hold at any place, at a hotel, or even outside Thailand. Now, the attendance via proxy, the law requires that it have to be in writing. I will go quickly as this slide shows that the item that have to be disclosed on the proxy. So number of shares held by the particular shareholders, name of the proxy holders, and the proxy have to be signed by that particular shareholders. And the proxy have to be, it should be in original, real with wet signature, presented to the chairman by the time the meeting starts. Now, here comes the important part. A lot of people has been asking for many years, can we attend the board meetings or shareholders meeting by video call or by phone call? Yes, I want to show you this page as the history or where the law is coming from. This law has already been cancelled, so the summary on this page is no longer applicable. So by history, it was not allowed for board or shareholder to attend the meeting by electronic means until 2014, when the military took over the government and launched this order number 24 by the National Council of Peace and Order. It allows in principle for board meetings and shareholders meeting to be attended by electronic means, phone calls or video calls. But it has not been very popular, whether with private companies or public companies. Why? As you can see, the conditions are quite challenging. The board meetings or the shareholders meeting, at least there have to be 1/3 of the quorum, member of 1/3 of the quorum have to walk into the meeting room, which means that you cannot have 100% electronic meetings. There have to be a physical meeting, a place, date, and time when 1/3 of the board or 1/3 of the shareholders attend in person or by proxy for shareholders meeting, which means by maximum 2/3 of the quorum can attend by electronics means, by phone or by video. But the most difficulty or the most drawback of this order was that whoever wants to attend by electronic means have to be in Thailand, So no phone call, no video call from Thailand, from outside Thailand. That's the most challenging limitation of that order. That's why it is not popular. Not many companies have done this electronic meeting because it's difficult to comply with these restrictions. And there are also security measures which was launched shortly after this order number 24, which made it even more restrictive to to arrange for electronic attendance. There have to be identity check. There have to be a recording, which I will explain under the new law. So this one was canceled, no longer applicable. Good news is the new one just came out very, very recently, last Sunday. So it has been launched less than a week. And I believe Telekin Kibin was the first firm to launch a client alert, telling the client about the new law and giving technical analysis. I give you a summary on this page. The new law was launched in the form of lawyer decree. It was not in form of act. The lawyer decree was the form of law, it's a law, but it was passed by administrative by the government because it was quick to do it. So the government just launched it on Sunday. The good thing is, as you can see on number 1 and number 2, if you can see my cursor, that's the good news. So the attendees can choose to attend by electronic means. So you can have from now on 100% e-meeting, no place, just date and time, and everyone can join in by telephone conference or video conference. That's the good news. So it's a relief or relaxation of the limitation from the previous one, which I showed you on the previous slide. Good news number 2 is that people from outside Thailand can join in. So people from America, Europe, Japan can dial in. So there's no more meeting venue. If you choose that everyone attend electronically, you can do that, and there's no place. Everyone can join. But there are some security measures. There are 2 types of security measures that you need to comply: the meeting security measures and IT security measures. The new one, because it's still fresh, there's no time for the relevant authority to issue new security measure. So the new law says the security measures under the old one will continue to apply. As you can see, I summarized here below. All attendees are able to vote. So first of all, there have to be identity check when the meeting starts. So the chairman has to perform identity check. So people cannot just pick up iPhone or Samsung phone, smartphone, and dial in. So there have to be meeting codes or username or password for login to be able to identify that particular person is board member of the company or is the shareholder of the company. And also the system, they have to be meeting control system, which allow people to vote, because at every agenda, there have to be a voting. And the Thai law for private company, there are 2 types of voting. Open voting, which you get it done by show of hand, but in the show of hand mode is a mechanism of 1 person per 1 vote. Or choice number 2 is a secret voting. That's 1 chair per 1 vote, or in case of preference shares, you get different voting right. So there had to be a mechanism for people to vote. And also, there have to be a recording at all time of the video calls or phone calls. So you have to have an IT technician or system controller, can be in-house, can be a third-party professional IT companies, to do recording of the video calls or phone call at all time. That's a major requirement. Also, electronic traffic data is a log file. Don't ask me what it is, I don't know. So you have to ask the IT guys. So it's a log file that you have to be recorded. Basically, what I was told is that it's a time entry or IP address of every attendee logging into that e-meeting. You have to make a minutes similar to physical meetings. So for e-meeting, you have to make a minutes, you have to document it. You can keep and save it in electronic form in a soft file. If you choose to do the e-meeting and comply with all these requirements, the law allows you to send the AGM notice or the board meeting notice by email. As you can see in the previous slide, it's a requirement to mail the notice by post to every shareholder. But if you choose to comply with all these e-meetings, you can switch from postal mail to electronic mail, so you can distribute it to via email. But the newspaper publication still is a requirement. So right now, the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society is drafting the new standard to replace the old security standards. I've seen the draft is still being in the drafting process. They're asking people to give opinion during the public hearings. When the draft come out, we will give you more update in the client alert. So tips and takeaway, what to do for the AGM. Board meeting come first. Venue can be outside Thailand for private company, but public company venue is quite restrictive. You can choose to appoint proxy. It can be any person, but at board meeting you cannot choose a proxy. The board has to attend the board meeting by themselves. Paper meetings is quite common, but it's not legal. It's not allowed under Thai law. Adopting resolution without holding a meeting. A lot of companies, a lot of clients, especially in Europe and America, has asked, "Kun Kapkit, can we adopt a resolution without holding meeting?" No, that's not allowed under Thai law. Electronic attendance, I described in full details in previous slide already. So a lot of companies facing travel bans and city lockdowns, and you have difficulty holding AGM by the deadline, especially for those who have to hold by April 30th deadline. Under Thai law, there's no channel for apply for time extension. And the penalties, as you can see on this slide, I break down into 3 different compliance duty. Holding AGM, 4 months deadline. The fine for private company is 6,000 baht for the company plus 6,000 multiplied by the number of the directors that sign the audit financial statement. If the audit financial statement can be signed by one person, so it's 6,000 for the company plus 6,000 for the directors. But if you take 2 signatures, it will be 18,000, 6 plus 6 plus 6. Submission of list of shareholders, which is due within 14 days after AGM date. The fine is only 2,000 for private companies, but for public companies can be 8,000. Now, submission of audit financial statement is due within 1 month from the AGM date. You can, if you have late AGM, if the 1 month period will start from the actual AGM date, not from the deadline. So as you can see, the longer date that you are late, the bigger fine. For 2 months late, for private company, you should be looking at about 2,000 baht. But for public company, it could be 4,000. If you are late more than four months, then it become 20,000. Now, for this slide, I just show you the due dates for those companies whose fiscal year ending December 31st. Holding AGM will be due by April 30th, which is next week, which means by today, you should already have the AGM notice mailed and published in the newspaper already. Submission of list of shareholder, that is 14 days after the AGM date. Submission of audit financial statement, that's 1 month. So the latest you can do would be May 14 and May 31st. Now, the Department of Business Development, seeing that many companies has difficulties holding the AGM by the due date. So it has launched a relief measure for all companies can apply for a relief or a waiver to the fine. As I point out in the chart showing the fine, we're talking about 12,000 baht fine or bigger. So if you don't want to pay the fine and you have no choice but to hold belated AGM, this is the channel for you to apply. It's not really an extension for the deadline, but it's a waiver to the fine. The relief is not given automatically. You have to submit an application for it. And the DBD will use discretion to grant, but I suppose they will grant approval to all applications submitted. Application have to be signed by the authorized director, but it can be submitted by manual or by mail or by electronics. No deadline for submission, so take your time, hold the delayed AGM first, and then fill out the form. We can assist you with the form completion and submission. Now that's the corporate relief measures. It comes to visa relief measure. There are a couple. I make it brief. Because of the travel ban, many foreigners get stuck in Thailand, or many foreigners work in Thailand but get stuck in their home country in Europe or in America, cannot come back. For those who get stuck in Thailand and your visa is about to expire, the Thai government has just launched a blanket visa extension effective from March 26. So anyone whose visa will expire after March 26 will automatically get extension up to April 30th. So at the end of this month, you don't have to file for application or anything. Your visa, if your visa ends during this period, will be automatically extended to end of April. That applies to short-term visa holder, long-term visa holder, privileged visa holder under the BUI or IAT. Now, for the foreigners living and working in Thailand, you know that if you stay in Thailand for consecutive long period, you have the duty to file the 90-day report, which is due within 90 days for the period of you are on the ground. That gets extended to April 30th too. Now, this just launched in the past 1 to 2 weeks. Is an extension from the previous one because the COVID-19 crisis continues and people get stuck. No airline flying in or out of Thailand, not many. So people will continue to get stuck in Thailand. That's why the government, the cabinet has decided to extend further from April 30th to end of July. That applies to visa holder automatic extension of their stay up to July 31st. And also the 90-day period gets extended to July 31st. That's the end of my presentation. I hope you find it interesting. I turn on the microphone, pass on to our moderator, Kun Supasit.
Okay, thank you, Kun Gopkit. So the next part of our presentation will be presented by Kun Warapa Aurat, Senior Associate and the head of our tax practice group. She will be focusing on tax relief measure introduced by the Revenue Department of Thailand.
Hello everyone, thank you again for joining us today. I will be discussing about the tax relief measures introduced by the government. Some of them are still in draft and are subject to change, while some of them have already been in effect. And I am very nervous today. I may be making a little funny face. Please don't take screenshot of that. Okay, I will start first with the relief measure that has already been in effect. This time extension for corporate income tax return filing. So as you know, companies in Thailand are required to file the corporate income tax return twice a year. These are the annual corporate income tax return or the PND 50 and the half-year tax return or the PND 51. For the annual tax return, the normal due date for filing and paying tax is within 150 days from the end of the accounting period. For instance, if your company 2019 is end on the December 30th, your obligation to file the annual corporate income tax return would be 29th of May this year. So the Revenue Department has extended the deadline for filing the annual corporate income tax return for companies that have to file their tax return during April to August to the 30th of August. So if your accounting period in between November 2019 to March 2020, your company would be eligible for this time extension. And if your normal deadline is due on the 24th to the 30th of August, you get another 8-day extension for filing the tax return online. So this time extension is also applied to the filing of the transfer pricing disclosure form, which some companies will have to file for the first time in this year. The deadline is as same as the deadline for the PND 50. For the mid-year corporate income tax return, The normal deadline is within 2 months from the end of the first 6 months of accounting period. So again, if your company accounting period is from January to December, the normal due date for filing the mid-year tax return would be by the end of August. So companies that have to file a mid-year tax return during April to the September, the Revenue Department has extended the deadline to the 30th of September. Again, if your normal deadline is due between 23rd to the 30th of September, you will have an 8-day extra for filing the tax return online. And it should be noted that this time extension is for companies that are not listed on the Stock Exchange of Thailand only. If your company is listed on the Stock Exchange of Thailand, you have to commit to the same normal deadline for filing tax return. And in response to the Revenue Department measure, the BOI has also extended the deadline for filing the application to use the corporate income tax exemption benefit. And just for a brief background for people who don't have to deal with the BOI companies that have the tax exemption benefit will have to submit an application to the BOI before they can use these exemption benefits. So normally this application is due within 120 days from the end of the accounting period, which is 30 days before the normal deadline for filing tax return. And since the deadline for filing tax return has been extended to the end of August, so the deadline for filing the application to use this tax exemption benefit has also been extended to the end of July, which is also 30 days before the extended due date for filing the tax return. And next is the personal income tax return. For your annual personal income tax return filing, the normal due date of March has been extended to the end of August. If you have additional tax payable, you can apply for tax payment in installments as well. But if you have tax refund, please make sure that you upload all of the supporting documents at the same time that you submit your tax return in order to ensure that you get the tax refund faster. And next is the time extension for other revenue taxes. So for other revenue taxes, including VAT, withholding tax, specific business tax, and stamp duties, the extension is currently available for the months of March and April only. For the tax return that are normally due on the date 7 of the following month, the due date for filing the return has been extended to the 15th of May. This extension is for both months of March and April, and there is no further extension for the online filing. And for the tax return that are normally due on the 15th of the following month, which are the VAT return or the PP30 and the normal monthly specific business tax return or the PT40, the due date for filing return for March and April has been extended to the 23rd of May. Again, no further extension for online filing. And for the stamp duties on instruments that have to be paid in cash, such as the high of work instrument that has the value of at least 100 million baht. The stamp duty that has to be paid in cash during April until the 15th of May has been extended until May 15th. And next is the withholding tax reduction. For the payments that are made during April to September, the withholding tax rate of 3% is reduced to 1.5%. And from October until December of next year, the 3% withholding tax will be reduced to 2% for the payers who use the e-withholding tax system only. And we should be careful that not all payments are subject to this reduction or withholding tax rate. Only certain type of payments and certain type of recipient would be eligible. I have summarized them in the table as shown on the screen now. For example, general service fee paid to company, typically given fees like 3%, you can reduce to 1.5%. Payment for the use of copyright paid to companies is also reduced to 1.5%. And examples of payments that are not eligible, such as dividends and payment made to overseas recipients, all these payments are still subject to the normal withholding tax rate. And next we have the time extension for excise tax payment. For the time extension is granted to two business only. The first one is the entertainment business operators, and the second one is the domestic oil and oil related products business operator. For the entertainment business operator, the extension is granted for 3 months from March to May. So the due date has been extended to until July 15 for all 3 months. And for the domestic oil and oil-related products operators, the due date for paying excise tax is extended to the date 15 of the month following the month that the goods leave the warehouse. And the next relief measure is the custom duty and import VAT exemption. For the custom duty exemption, the goods must be on the list that is issued by the Ministry of Public Health and must be imported by the end of September. For the import VAT exemption, there is no detail of the eligible goods, but the import goods must be imported for donation to the public hospital, the government agency, or the public charity. And the import VAT exemption is granted until February of next year. And more importantly, although the import VAT and custom duty could be exempted, the cost of donating these items might not be deductible in your corporate income tax computation. The rule for computing the allowable donation expense is that it shall not exceed 2% of your net taxable profit of the company for that year. So if your company is making a loss, the donation expense will have to be added back in your corporate income tax computation. The Revenue Department has not mentioned if there will be any relaxation on these donation expense rules, so please be mindful if you plan to donate. And next we have the draft relief measure for the SME. The first one is additional deduction for the interest expense that is paid under the soft loan scheme to the government. The draft scheme is that the loan interest expense paid under the soft loan scheme during April to December of this year will be allowed for an additional reduction of 1.5%. So the soft loan scheme is a government lending scheme with a very low interest rate that is to be implemented as a result of COVID-19. The loan will be funded by the Bank of Thailand under the Emergency Decree on Financial Assistance to Business Operators who affected from COVID-19. This law has been announced yesterday, and the loan will be funded through the participating commercial banks. So if your company is looking for a loan during this time, you may want to contact your bank if they have this soft loan program available. However, the criteria for SME that can claim additional deduction of the interest expense, it is first, the SME must have the income not greater than 500 million baht per year, and you must have the accounting period end on or before the 30th of September 2019. And the SME must have the employee not exceeding 200 people. And the last condition is that the SME must have registered for the single account taxpayer under the tax amnesty scheme in 2016. And you can check if your company has registered as a single account taxpayer from the website of the Revenue Department. If you don't know where the URL is, I can send you the link after this. And another relief measure is that additional deduction of 3 times of wages expense. This will be eligible for wages paid during April to July of this year or 4 months. The same criteria for SME apply, but for this relief measure, the company must have registered the employee in the social security system and must maintain the number of employees for not less than the number that you have in the December last year, and the employee wages must not exceed 15,000 baht per month per person. And next we have the draft measure for the acceleration of VAT refund. This relief measure is for the companies who have registered as a good exporter only. Normally, if good exporter file VAT return online and request for VAT refund, the goods exporter should get the VAT refund within 30 days. So this measure will reduce the 30 days to 15 days. And for normal filing, the normal timeline is 60 days, will be reduced to 45 days. And if you are expecting a faster withholding tax refund process, I don't think it will happen, because if you ever experience dealing with the Revenue Department before, you may know that when you request for tax refund of whatsoever kind, the Revenue Department will do the tax audit on all kinds of revenue tax, just to ensure that your company does not have any outstanding tax liability payable to the Revenue Department. So this tax audit would normally not be done within 60 days. So the best way that the Revenue Department might be able to help is to delay the tax payment. And next we have additional personal income tax deduction and exemption. The first one is the health insurance premium cap will be increased from 15,000 baht to 25,000 baht. However, the increase will still be subject to the aggregate cap of 100,000 baht deduction for the life and the annuity insurance premium. And thank you to the board medical staff and public health personnel. The income from taking risks trying to combat with the spread and treatment of COVID-19 will be exempted from personal income tax next year. And the last one is the tax relief measure on the debt restructuring by non-bank creditors. These non-bank creditors are, for example, credit card issuers like Citibank or American Express, or the personal loan business operator like UMED Plus. The draft relief measure include, for example, the exemption from income tax on the debt forgiveness, or the exemption from income tax, VAT, specific business tax, and stamp duty imposed on the transfer of assets, sale of goods, provision of service, and any document that execute in relation to the debt restructuring. For the debt restructuring by companies in general or the commercial creditors, so far there is no tax relief measure with respect to the bad debt write-off. So the rule for bad debt write-off for tax purpose will remain the same. That is, for example, if you have the uncollectible debt of 100,000 baht, you will have to issue like a few demands of payment and a confirmation by a lawyer saying that it does not work to pursue the debt collection to the court. And however, in the past financial crisis or the big natural disaster, the Revenue Department would normally grant a relaxation on bad debt write-off if the write-off follow the Bank of Thailand suggested procedure or involved in the restructuring with the bank creditors. 1 or 2 months ago, the Bank of Thailand has issued a guideline for banks and non-bank creditors to help the customer who affected from the COVID-19, like reducing the debt or reducing the amount paying per month. And in response to the Bank of Thailand guidelines, last week the Thai Federal Accounting Professions has also issued a guideline for the accounting treatment for companies that help the debtor who affect from COVID-19. So we may be able to expect the Revenue Department to issue a relaxation rules on the bad debt write-off within the near future. And that is all for my presentation today. And next will be the Q&A session. I will hand over this back to Khun Subasit.
Okay, thank you, Khun Warapha. So let's begin with our Q&A session. The first question we have is with regard to the AGM. So the attendee asks, if the company does not wish to hold an online AGM, could the company still send AGM notice to its shareholder via email instead of publishing it in a local newspaper or sending the AGM notice via register post?
The way I read the new law, which is law decree, we seem to adopt the same concept from the previous law. So sending AGM notice by email is conditional on the holding of the AGM by electronic means. So you have to make determination ahead of the meetings. Are you going to offer, meaning the board, which is the organizer of the AGM, will determine whether this AGM will allow people to choose to attend by electronic means or not. If you choose to, then you can distribute the AGM notice by email. But if you choose not, because there are some technicals that you have to prepare ahead of time, you can use Microsoft Teams meetings, you can use Blue Jeans or other software program that allow people to attend by video conference, and you have to send invite by email ahead of time. So you have to tell yourself, make determination whether you're going to allow shareholders to attend by electronic means or not. If you do, then you can choose to send by email, not by post. But my understanding is that the newspaper publication is still applicable whether you choose the physical or e-meeting.
Okay, thank you. For the second question, the law regarding electronic meeting, the attendee would like to ask whether it is effective yet.
It is already. It was launched on Sunday, so it came into effect on Sunday. It was published in the government gazette. It became effective already. But please note that, as I mentioned, the Ministry of Digital have to launch a new set of security measures, which probably be a clearer, better or worse, I don't know. I've seen the draft already. That should be launched within next 1 or 2 weeks. So wait and see, because the law is not long. The new law just allow e-meeting in principle. There's still some question how you're going to hold it, how you can comply with the recording or the voting requirement. For example, when people vote, how you allow them to vote. If they call in their voice to vote, or what if it's in secret voting, how do they do it?
Okay, thank you. For the next question, this is with regard to proxy attendance of the AGM. The attendees would like to know whether one proxy holder can act as a proxy holder for one or more shareholder or not.
Yes, 2 or more shareholders can appoint the same proxy. So one person can hold proxy for 3, 4, 5 shareholders, and that applies to private company and public company. But for private companies, you need to remember that it's been determined by Supreme Court that there cannot be only one person in the room or in the meeting. Otherwise, it will not be called meeting. So in case you choose to have a proxy, you have to choose at least 2 different persons to be 2 proxy holders in the room. Otherwise, it will not be called meetings.
Okay, this question is with regard to the SME eligibility for tax measure. Is there a maximum paid up capital requirements to be eligible for such tax relief measure?
Well, based on the current draft, it has not been mentioned about the minimum paid up capital, just the amount of the income that it must not exceed 500 million baht per year.
Okay. Next question is with regard to the AGM. Is the amendment allowing electronic meeting, do you expect it to be a permanent measure, or is this merely temporary measure introduced by the Thai government to help with the COVID-19 outbreak only?
Good question. Good question. Because the new law was launched unannounced. Nobody was expecting it. The old version was launched 6 years ago in 2014. It was not popular due to the reason that I already explained. It did not allow people to call in from outside Thailand. So a lot of people complained, and DBD, which is the regulator, the Department of Business Development, was drafting amendment to Public Limited Company Act to give a better version of the electronic attendance than that old law, but it was in the drafting process for many years. But the government decided, probably because of COVID-19 and the urgent need of many companies failing to hold the AGM by the due date, decided to launch a better version of e-meeting law. So they get rid of the 2 major drawbacks: the partial physical attendance under the old law required at least 1/3 of the quorum to attend, and also allow people from outside Thailand to dial in. So they launched this better version. It was in a hurry. I cannot tell whether this would last because there's no time limitation under the law, so it's supposed to apply indefinite period.
Okay. The next question is with regard to the extension by the Revenue Department in regard to the submission of the PND 50. This measure is introduced to help with company with closing fiscal period of December 31st of December, right? Do you expect it to also help with other entities who have different fiscal period as well?
Oh, the extension is for the company who has to file the PND 50 during April to August. So it's not just for the company who has a fiscal period in December. As far as I count, it should be for the company who has their fiscal period and on like 3rd of November last year until March this year.
Okay. The next question is with regard to the electronic signature on the proxy form. Would such electronic signature be acceptable on AGM documents?
In principle, yes. There's a separate law called Electronic Transaction Act, which define the term electronic signatures. It has to be safe, it has to be reliable, and it cannot be copied. So if you have the digital process to create that signature, and you can assure with this IT security to assure that it was created by this particular person, that e-signature, whatever form it is, can be signed on whatever documents or platform and have to be accepted for all accounts. That's the principle under Electronic Transaction Act. So there are two separate things. Is one section is called deemed signature. So you don't have to put a signature, but by logging in using username, password. For example, the DVD asks every company in Thailand to submit audited financial statement, not in paper anymore, but by logging on their website using password that they give. So by using username, password, it replaces or it substitutes the traditional signatures. That's called deemed signatures. And the other thing is called digital signature or e-signature, which have to be created and certified by a professional third party. So for proxy, yes, but normally it is the company who send the proxy form to the shareholders. Usually it comes in the paper, or if you choose the e-meeting, the proxy form can come in a soft file attached to the email. So when you affix the signature, you make sure that you have signed in electronic term and then comply with the Electronic Transaction Act. Remember, scanned image of your signature would not qualify as a good e-signature. You have to be more sophisticated than that. Okay. But that's something I like.
I believe we have time for 2 or 3 questions more. The next question is with regard to the Board of Director meeting and the AGM. In case the company decides to hold electronic AGM or BDM, do they still, when they send the notice to the shareholder, do they still have to wait the 7 days period similar to when they send via register post?
That's clear under law. Whatever time period, because on the private company is governed by Civil and Commercial Code. For public companies governed by Public Limited Company Act. So both require 7 days advance notice period. Now the new law on e-meetings give you the choice to send the notice by email, but the time period still stays. So it's at least 7 days, or some companies, the Article of Association asks for a longer time, maybe 10 days, 14 days, that still applies.
The next question is about whether Khun Warapha, do you have any insight on the loans available to SME that you mentioned to the SME? Do you have any insight on that particular relief measures?
Well, the draft law is very new and there is not much information on that. But I actually think that the period of claiming additional deduction might be extended or delayed because I have seen the draft soft loan regulation and they try to relaxing on the payment of the interest for the first 6 months. So if the exemption is from April to December, you might not be able to actually benefit from that relief measures. So I think this draft will actually be amended when it actually comes to effect.
On that SME soft loan interest scheme, just want to make a remark that it's only available to qualifying SME, not all SME. One particular important criteria for that is that it has to be SME who decided to join the scheme called single account scheme, which the government made the opening and close already in 2016. So a lot of SMEs signed up for that scheme, declaring that they no longer have a secret account. They will only have a disclosed account. And that scheme was closed and gone already. So new SME who has not signed for that account will not qualify for this soft loan, I understand.
Okay. Now to our last question. Do you expect for there to be any other relief measure to be introduced by the Thai government authorities to help businesses?
Well, actually, the government has appointed the private working group, which is comprised of like very famous business entrepreneurs to come up with a relief measure that they want the government to implement. But all these measures will be subject to the discretion of the government as well. So I think there will be more relief measures released.
There's been good corporate relief already on the AGM, holding belated AGM. There's been good news about visa holders already for those who cannot come back to Thailand to renew their visa. So it gets extended first to end of April, now extend to end of July, so take your time. But there's been no good news for work permit yet. I just checked, the Department of Employment has not yet granted any relief. So those who have work permit and is about to be due for renewal, you have to renew it, but you cannot do it remotely. So if you get stuck in your home country in Europe or in America, you cannot come back and your work permit is about to expire, you have no choice but to let it expire. When you come back within, you have to get a new visa, non-immigrant B visa, business visa, and come back and get a new one. So, but probably the reason that they have not launched the relief because the process for renewing the quantity of supporting documents required for the renewing is pretty much the same as applying for the new one. So if you lost the work permit, that's not really a disaster. You come back and you apply for a new book, that's it.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I just saw the question about the soft loan. Yes, there should be a fund from the Bank of Thailand, like 500 billion baht to the bank. But because of the law has just become in effect yesterday, so the commercial banks might not really well planned of how to manage all these funds. So maybe we should wait a little while, like a few more days or weeks, for the bank to come up with the loan to be available for the business operators.
Okay. We don't have any more questions.
Okay. Thank you everyone for attending. Until see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
สวัสดีครับ
ครับ